All right, Coach's Corner number 12 today from CoachScottFarley.com. Our topic today is non-school trainers or non-school teams that your student athletes might be involved in. And this could be them going outside for strength and conditioning or speed training. This could be them going out and getting sport-specific skill training, or it could be um, out club sport, whether it be travel baseball, softball, club volleyball, club soccer, 7-on-7 football, AAU basketball, any of that, outside of your school program. And I think, kind of my approach for this conversation is to kind of look at what I see as pros and cons of that non-school participation and those non-school trainers. And starting with the pros, the positives of kids doing it is, number one, kids are working. They're working and they're doing things to get better, and they demonstrated a desire to get better, and they're willing to commit the time and energy and quite often money to do that. And so I think that's a positive thing, and you got to look at it from that perspective. Another positive is exposure to new things. They can learn things from their non-school trainer or non-school coach that they could bring back to your school program, and that could be a positive. If you're flexible and humble enough as a high school coach to take that, I think that could be a real benefit. Another positive is they get to see players from other schools, and I think that can do a couple things. Number one, it can humble that kid who thinks they're a little more than what they really are, and they can see, there's talented kids at other schools just like they are, or maybe more so. And it can also, the kid that lacks confidence can see that they can be successful and they do match up with school or players from other schools, so it can build their confidence. So I think, seeing those other players and developing some friendships and some relationships with those kids, I think is a real positive. They participate. Another positive of non-school participation is through their competitions and through their training and their practicing, the kids improve. They come back to your program, and their improvement benefits your program, and there's little or no personal investment on your part or your staff's part. So I think you got to look at it that as a real positive too, is the kid got better and you really didn't have to do much about it. The one of the major arguments in favor of it, and I guess I have some questions about this, and it probably varies between sports and it probably varies between programs, is college exposure. I think a lot of the non-school programs kind of sell themselves on being the way to get college exposure, and that coaches, college coaches are watching during the club season and not so much during the school season. And there might be some truth to that in some sports and some value in that. And so I think you've got to take that as a positive. And the last positive, frankly, and this is unfortunate, but the reality is some high school coaches just aren't very good. Some high school coaches are not investing in off-season training programs and not, working with kids in the off-season and aren't promoting them to colleges. And so if kids want to get better and they want to get coached, they've got to go outside of the school setting to do that. So I think that's kind of the last positive. Now the cons, the negatives of your athletes being involved in these non-school programs is the teaching. Number one, and this is the biggest one, I think, is the teaching may contradict the high school coach or the high school system. They may be teaching technique that is different than what you're coaching, and that can create conflict, create injury, frankly, with using different muscles than what they're doing in your normal program, but create a lot of just mental conflict that this coach says do it this way, that coach says do it that way. And for a young athlete, that can be who's trying to please everybody, that can create some issues. I think the players can become more attached to the non-school program. I think a lot of times those coaches are really player oriented. They're not worried about building a team, and they are focused on the individual player and develop overly close relationships with the players, so the player becomes more attached to that non-school program. And you see it, I see it in football where, kids will be recruited and they'll identify with their 7-on-7 team more than they do their high school team. I think it can and often does discourage multi-sport participation. I know my girls, for example, played club volleyball, and it was always complicated for them to play a spring sport, because at the time in Michigan, volleyball, well, for one of them was in the winter, but a lot of club volleyball was in the springtime. And if they were playing a spring sport, it was really, really difficult for them to manage that. And so a lot of kids choose not to participate in the school off-season sport. And so, they focus too early on one sport and miss out on the multi-sport participation. And I think the last con, and this is the one that I think most coaches are most jaded by, is the recruiting by other high schools. You get coaches from other high schools that are working in these non-school environments, whether it be at a gym or at a indoor facility of some sort, and they're coaching club teams and they're coaching AAU teams and 7-on-7 teams, and they use that relationship that they develop in the off season in these non-school programs to encourage them to come to their schools. And I think there's more of that than what people want to admit. But I think that's one of the real cons. So long story short, I think one of the things that you really need to do as a high school coach is number one, run off-season programs yourself so kids don't feel like they have to go somewhere else, but also know that it's going to happen. It's the culture we have today. If they spend money somewhere else, they're always going to be perceived to be better than you are, that you're doing it for free. But go out and find out what they're really doing. I mean, I've had kids that were training with strength coaches, or and doing strength workouts outside of our program, and I went and talked to the guy and just found out what they were doing, and discussed about how what he was doing was different than what we were doing, and connect with the quarterback coach or the club volleyball coaches that your kids are playing for, so you get a sense of the kind of people that they're around and how they're being coached and how that might fit into your program. So know that it's here to stay, and function as best you can within that kind of a system. So take it for what it's worth, and have a great week, and make sure you're out there being the coach that your kids need you to be.